What's your name?
Ben.
Ben was a happy and healthy 7-year-old.
It was a sad, sad thing to say goodbye to your only son.
His little boy undergoing routine surgery, the victim of a tragic medical mistake.
I cried so hard it hurt.
An investigation found the cause, a deadly and preventable mix-up of medication.
Beautiful, healthy child that should not have died.
And then this hospital and this doctor did something extraordinary. Instead of fighting a family in court, they admitted their fatal error.
We made a bad mistake. We killed this kid.
So have other hospitals changed their procedures to prevent the same mistake from happening again?
Have you issued a statement saying never do this in the operating room?
We have not issued such a statement.
Could what happened to this family happen to yours?
There are no federal inspectors.
John Hockenberry with a lesson from Ben. A Dateline special. From our studios in Rockefeller Center, here is Jane Pauley.
Good evening. We all know the leading causes of death in this country. Heart disease is first. You could probably guess that cancer is second. Chances are you'd never guess another: medical mistakes. According to one government report, errors made in hospitals are the 8th biggest killer in the United States. Tonight, a case in point: how a simple operating room mix-up led to a tragic death. Not all that unusual. But what happened next was. Here's John Hockenberry.
Do you know what your mommy's name is?
Tammy.
And what's daddy's name?
Tim.
Look at that big smile you have on your face. What's your name?
Ben.
Ben. And what's your last name?
Ben Cole.
Do you have any sisters or brothers?
I just got a sister.
And what's your sister's name?
Margaret.
Margaret.
He was a natural-born leader. Everyone wanted to be near him and to enjoy his company. He was that kind of a person.
Tim Kolb likes to talk about his son Ben, his little buddy with big things ahead of him.
There was definitely something a little special about him. He was projected to be well over 6 foot tall, blonde hair, extremely athletic. It was almost like he was too perfect. Too perfect. I just didn't know what to make of it. I felt so blessed to have a son like that.
Perfect, but for his ear problems.
Unfortunately.
Shoot, babe! That's all. Good job.
Like so many other kids, young Ben had a history of ear problems. He'd already had 2 operations as a toddler, and then 5 years ago he needed another one to remove a benign growth inside his ear, an operation that Tim Kolb was told by the doctors was routine.
And routine meant to you what back then?
Simple, short time in the operating room, very unobtrusive, those kinds of things.
In the morning, out by the afternoon?
Oh, yes, definitely, yeah.
Did the idea of a mistake even enter the mind of this father of a 7-year-old?
You were aware that at times things would happen, but you would think that the percentage would be extremely low. That was just my assumption, that very little went wrong.
And that was your expectation when Ben went into the operating room?
Certainly.
Who thinks about mistakes when they're being wheeled into the operating room? The last thing you want to imagine about your own doctor is the mistakes he's made. Doctors don't make mistakes, we grow up thinking. They work miracles, right?
Unfortunately, the operating room and hospitals are relatively dangerous places.
Dr. George McLean is Deputy Chief of Anesthesia at Martin Memorial Hospital in Stuart, Florida, where Ben Kolb had his ear surgery.
People want to believe that doctors are perfect, right?
Yeah, I think the public and a lot of doctors want to believe that. Everybody wants to believe that everything is always going to be fine, and nobody wants to be the victim of something that's going to happen 1 in 10,000, 100,000, or a million. It's just denial that it's going to happen to you. When you get on an airplane, most people aren't expecting it to crash, but people do know that airplanes do crash.
Mommy, get your stocking.
Ben's surgery was scheduled 2 weeks before Christmas, but on the morning of the operation, Ben was particularly uneasy.
You have to hold it.
As my wife was getting ready to take him to the hospital, he came to me and says, "Dad, I don't want to go. I don't want to go get this operation." So I sat him on my lap before he left and told him that we loved him so much that we didn't want anything to happen to him. And those words still haunt me to this day because
he
trusted
you.
Me. Yeah, I had never.
And you trusted
the doctor, yes. And I thought, as usual, everything would be fine. So.
Circle of trust.
Yeah.
At 10 a.m., Ben was wheeled into the operating room. Down the hall, his mother waited with an early Christmas present she'd brought along as a special treat. At 10:30, 20 minutes after an anesthesiologist had put Ben to sleep, his surgeon gave him a series of injections around his ear, the drug lidocaine, a local anesthetic. The actual ear surgery hadn't even begun at this point. But just 2 minutes later, Ben was in crisis.
I got called to the operating room because the child's vital signs were grossly abnormal with very high blood pressure and very high heart rate.
Anesthesiologist George McLean, who hadn't been involved in Ben's surgery until that point, couldn't explain why he was having this severe a reaction to a lidocaine injection. But he knew he had to get Ben's vital signs under control fast. He gave Ben a series of drugs that within moments restored his heart rate and blood pressure back down toward normal.
And everything looked good, and the child looked really, all signs had returned to normal, and he looked very stable, and we made the decision to continue.
Did you have a feeling that something wasn't quite right here, that you didn't have all the information?
Well, whenever you see something that you haven't seen before or is outside the range of what you've seen, it makes you very concerned. And when I left the operating room, I went back and pulled out a couple textbooks just to make sure that my drug regimen I had used was the appropriate one.
But just moments later, Dr. McLean was summoned back to the OR. This time, Ben's vital signs had plunged below normal and had collapsed in a deadly free fall.
He was rapidly deteriorating. Pretty soon we lost what's called the EKG complex, and he just went flatline. And we did CPR, I think it was for about an hour and 40 minutes.
Crisis teams struggled furiously to save Ben, and after an agonizing effort, his heart was once again beating on its own. But Ben was comatose and on a ventilator. And when he was wheeled into intensive care, the cause of the crisis was still a mystery.
What did you think had happened?
Right away, you're worried about what happened, but you're more focused on doing the resuscitation. When you see something you've never seen in over 25, 30 years in the operating room, you don't know what's going on. And
it's a scary feeling.
It's very scary. It makes you feel very insecure very quickly.
Reopen it up.
Ben's mother, still waiting to see her son, simply couldn't believe what had happened in just 2.5 hours.
The surgeon and I went and talked to the mother. I laid it out very seriously that he was currently in a coma and that there was a chance that he might not wake up. And the mother said, well, when can I give him his Christmas present? I bought him early. I want to give him the present today. And I kept trying to tell her, well, he might not wake up. And she said, well, I know he's going to wake up. And I said, well, that's good, because everybody on TV wakes up.
Tim Kolb, who'd spent that morning reassuring his son, raced from his furniture workshop to the hospital.
I was brought into the intensive care unit where my son was hooked up to a ventilator. And people tried to give me some information, but it was all very vague. You might as well be standing on the moon. That's the way I felt.
But even from outer space, Tim says, he already knew for sure what no one else would say out loud.
I was informed that they were going to transfer him to another hospital, and I watched as they removed the ventilator to get him over onto a gurney. And when they removed that ventilator and I saw how he laid there and rolled over and his tongue hung out, the first impression that hit me was, I've seen this before, dead dogs on the side of the road. I knew there at that moment that my son was dead. Nobody had to tell me.
But it wasn't until the following day, after he'd been transferred to a larger hospital, that Ben Kolb was officially declared dead.
What did you and your wife do when you learned finally the news that you'd already suspected?
We went in and said goodbye to him one last time. And that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I was there with my wife, and we just stood over Ben and sobbed uncontrollably. I cried so hard it hurt, but I couldn't stop. It was a sad, sad thing to say goodbye to your only son. It was tough.
Now I have to open up my another present.
Ben's parents and older sister had planned to hear him sing in his school's holiday pageant. Instead, they listened to his eulogy, trying to find comfort and hoping for answers to the question no parent ever wants to ask.
Somebody messed up. Somebody had to make a mistake. Something's wrong somewhere.
To take a 7-year-old healthy little soccer playing, baseball playing child off the street and not return him to his parents is not the high point of your career.
Even though many in the community believed it was his mistake that had caused Ben's death, Dr. McLean attended Ben's funeral.
Why aggravate the situation by not being decent, kind, and supportive of the family? If I'm going to get sued and torn apart by a plaintiff's lawyer, I'm going to get sued and torn apart whether I was the world's nicest guy or the world's biggest toad. And I think about 3 nights later, I ended up going to the funeral and going up and reviewing with the family. And that was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my career. But it probably stands out as the thing I'm probably most proud of having done.
And what did you get from that moment of interaction with the family there at the funeral? What did you give?
I don't know. I don't know what I gave. And I can't describe what I got.
But it's the most important thing of your career.
I think that, boy, still had trouble for these many years.
As for Martin Memorial Hospital, until they figured out how Ben had died and why, the life of every other surgical patient in their hospital was potentially at risk. Would more patients have to die before they found out exactly what was wrong?
When we return, tests come back, telling hospital officials exactly what it was that went wrong during Ben Kolb's surgery.
How did you feel when those results came back?
Devastated. It was the worst thing that had ever happened.
What was to blame for a young boy's death? When a lesson from Ben continues.
Closeted disaster area? Get the Rubbermaid Freeslide wire shelving system with shelves, racks, baskets, and a unique design that lets hangers glide from end to end. Your closet won't know what hit it.
Super Polygrip holds for the whole day. I never worry about my dentures moving, and I can eat foods now that I never could eat before. Eating an apple is a wonderful experience now. Super Polygrip really has given me my confidence back.
An illicit romance.
I was just thinking.
About what?
About you.
Nobody saw it coming. Newsweek raves, once it gets its hooks in you, you can't turn away. 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up. The Los Angeles Times says Sissy Spacek gives a pitch-perfect performance.
I know what you think, that I let him get away with everything!
And the Wall Street Journal proclaims it's the best American film of the year. In the Bedroom, rated R, now in theaters everywhere.
Here in Chef Neri's kitchen in Italy, Olive Garden chefs have learned to make her special tortelloni di Fizzano. For $8.95, you can enjoy it tonight with your family, while Chef Neri's favorite student learns to make it for hers. Olive Garden, when you're here, you're family.
Rock and roll, baby! Would you knock it off? I'll give you a bump to quit playing that.
All right, it's a deal.
Why'd he stop for just $1?
Hey, $1 buys a lot when you dial 1010-220.
All calls up to 20 minutes are 99 cents.
Yeah, and 7 cents a minute after 20.
20 minutes for 99 cents. That rocks.
Oh, no.
Anybody got a request?
How about some earplugs?
How about some earplugs? I know that.
Dial 1010-220.
My ears are...
Everywhere around the world, they're coming to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they're coming to America. They're coming to America. They're coming to America today.
The Winter Olympics, this February on NBC.
Coming in 3 days, are women being ripped off when it comes to home repairs? Home Improvement, a special interactive dateline coming in 3 days.
Chevrolet presents Olympic Pride, honest values, enduring quality, American tradition. After competing in luge at 3 Olympic Winter Games, Bonnie Warner retired in 1992. A decade later, her competitive fire has been rekindled in women's bobsled. Warner, now a 39-year-old working mother, is determined to win gold when her new sport debuts at the 2002 Winter Games. Chevrolet, proud sponsor of the 2002 U.S. Olympic team.
Impala. My dad had one of these.
Really? Wow.
I just have some very nice memories from that car.
Did his have the smoke lenses in the front? Rear deck spoiler, 200 horsepower, V6 engine,
16-inch aluminum wheel. Well, I just love that they brought the Impala back.
Whenever you call me,
Chevy Impala LS. The feeling never fades. You're gonna love it.
This is my car.
Impala. We'll be there.
Gene Hackman has been nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance in The Royal Tenenbaums.
Right on!
The New York Times has named it the year's best film. 4 stars. The Oscar race has begun. An unqualified masterpiece. 2 thumbs up. It's hilarious. Gene Hackman, Angelica Houston, Gwyneth Paltrow, Ben Stiller, Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson, Danny Glover, and Bill Murray. The Royal Tenenbaums.
He also stole bonds out of my safety deposit box when I was 14.
Rated R. Now playing.
New America Online version 7.0 is here.
There's never been a better time to join.
Call now for our best offer ever.
7.0 is filled with a whole bunch of new stuff.
Bing! You got your instant messages.
It's fun getting email.
You've got mail. Call now, sign up over the phone, and be online in minutes.
Customer service is great.
7.0 makes it even easier.
Call 1-877-265-0200 now to join AOL and get a risk-free special offer for new members.
What are you waiting for?
America Online, so easy to use, no wonder it's #1.
They say it started very small, as most dreams do. Then the dream began to grow and come alive, touching every one of us, lighting up the sky.
Join us this year as we celebrate the 100th birthday of the man who started it all. Make your plans at DisneyWorld.com.
We share our dream come true.
A lesson from Ben. Tonight's Dateline special continues. Here now is Stone Phillips.
Returning to our story, during a routine operation, 7-year-old Ben Kolb suddenly and unexpectedly died. Concerned that other patients could be at risk, hospital officials launched an investigation to figure out why it happened. They were stunned by what they found. Once again, here's John Hockenberry.
Ben, what kind of foods do you like to eat?
Pizza.
What else?
Spaghetti.
Ooh.
The anticipation of the future with me and my son was gone. There would be no future.
Tim Kolb wanted an explanation. Why did Ben, his healthy 7-year-old son, die during what was supposed to have been a routine ear operation?
You're handsome. How'd you get so handsome?
Mommy did it.
Mommy did it? Oh,
It's highly abnormal. It had never happened that a child had their heart stop in the operating room.
Donnie Haas, who's been a nurse for 40 years, was the risk manager at Martin Memorial Hospital. It was her job to help prevent injuries from happening and limit hospital loss if they did. She led the investigation to find the cause of Ben's mysterious death before any other patient suffered the same fate. The investigation quickly zeroed in on that drug lidocaine, a common local anesthetic that Ben had been given at the start of his operation.
I thought that somehow that product was bad. I didn't know what, how, or why. Right, something.
And something like a tainted batch of lidocaine could quickly become a national health crisis.
If we had a bad batch, it not only placed in jeopardy every other patient who was going to get that drug from us, but throughout the country, anyone who had that batch.
Donnie was ready for this type of crisis. She took the drug off the pharmacy shelves, gathered Ben's vial of lidocaine and the syringe used to inject it, and sent them to specialized laboratories for testing. But no one was ready for the shocking result. According to the labs, there was no lidocaine at all in the syringe. Instead, they found an entirely different drug.
How did you feel when those results came back?
Devastated. It was the worst thing that had ever happened.
The syringe that should have contained an anesthetic actually contained a highly concentrated stimulant, topical adrenaline, a drug to be used at a different point in Ben's operation.
My heart just sunk. I thought,
because you knew that if there was ever a drug you didn't want to mix up
you don't want to mix up those two.
Lidocaine puts you down, adrenaline pumps you up. I mean, the opposite reaction.
Exactly.
The topical adrenaline was supposed to have been kept in a cup to be dabbed with cotton swabs onto the incision if needed. The powerful stimulant is only meant to be injected in emergency situations.
I reviewed, I think, every piece of literature that's been written. The child certainly received what the literature would classify as a lethal dose.
A lethal dose.
A lethal dose.
So how did two completely different drugs with such opposite effects get mixed up during surgery? The drug started out in vials like these, sealed and labeled at the factory, clear to everyone which is which. But once inside the OR, a nurse broke the seals, transferred the drugs into two open, sterile cups sitting next to each other, a common practice in hospitals around the country. Lidocaine into this cup, adrenaline into this one. But if the adrenaline was poured into the wrong cup by accident, could anyone really be sure which drug was which?
Now, can you tell the difference between these two liquids?
They look like water. Once you take them out of their vials, they look like water.
It didn't matter what the labels on the cups said, because once the drugs were separated from their factory-sealed and certified containers, they became indistinguishable. They became an accident waiting to happen. So when another nurse filled Ben's unlabeled syringe with what was supposed to be the local anesthetic, the accident happened.
When you look at things with hindsight bias, it looks so simple. Why didn't we see this before? We didn't.
The hospital immediately changed its system in the operating room, eliminating the cups and filling syringes directly from the labeled vials instead. That simple error, pouring the right medication into the wrong container, was the worst medical mistake in the history of the hospital. The badly designed system in their operating room had allowed good people to do something terribly wrong. But nationwide, it is children, according to research, who are most at risk in hospitals. Children are actually 3 times more likely than adults to experience potentially harmful and completely preventable medication errors.
We knew for sure what had happened, and we knew that the error was ours.
But knowing their system was to blame for Ben's death, and facing the almost certain prospect of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, Martin Memorial made a remarkable decision. The hospital didn't punish or even blame anyone involved in the case.
At first blush, that might sound like a whitewash. Everyone off the hook. But the hospital decided that punishing doctors and nurses for the hospital's own flawed system would simply make it more difficult to find out about and to fix any other medical mistakes that might occur.
Do people want to blame a person for a medical error rather than a system, a process, a procedure?
It's easier to blame a person, much easier, because you're done. You say, you made a mistake, we're done, okay?
Get rid of you, no more mistakes.
Wrong.
wrong.
That's what, maybe we used to think that, maybe some people still do, but that's really wrong because it wasn't the people. The people were good people. The system was wrong.
Did you feel like you dodged a bullet in some way? That suddenly the fault wasn't on you in the same way?
I mean, you go from knowing, wait a minute, I'm off the hook, but we made a bad mistake. We killed this kid. And you're part of the team. And it didn't matter who did what to whom. That child died on your watch.
It's no consolation to Dr. McLean that he wasn't even called into the case until after the fatal drug mix-up and injection. You get the feeling no punishment could match the misery he already feels.
Everybody has their demons, and my demon is I don't know. I don't know whether I did all the right things or all the wrong things. I don't know if I did the right thing in the treatment.
You know, Doc, we've just skimmed the surface on this, but if I didn't know this happened 5 years ago, I'd think it was last week for you.
It stays with you. Sorry, it's.
The hospital knew the truth about Ben's death, but the facts uncovered by its investigation were also the makings of a staggering lawsuit. What the hospital was about to do with that information is almost never done.
Am I doing a good job?
You bet you, Ben. You're doing excellent.
When we come back, hospital officials know it was their mistake that killed young Ben Kolb. What will they tell his parents?
We wanted to know what happened. We wanted the truth.
But how would Ben's parents react to the full truth? When a lesson from Ben continues.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States!
NBC Wednesday at a special time, 8/7 Central.
It's going to be a very close election.
A 2-hour West Wing that takes you to the beginning of the campaign.
We're going to write a new book, right here, right now.
The West Wing 2-hour event starts NBC Wednesday at 8/7 Central.
Dateline NBC, winner of the Sigma Delta Chi Award for Excellence in Journalism. The year's most honored television news magazine, Dateline, will be right back.
People across the nation are getting the message. For great year-end values, amazing selection, Toyotathon 02. Right now, you'll find everything you've been looking for in the all-new, redesigned Camry. Sleeker, more powerful, better than ever before, which says a lot, given that Camry's been the best-selling car in America the last 4 years. Toyotathon 02, password value.
This is 6-1, we're hit!
Black Hawk Down, winner of 5 American Film Institute Award nominations.
Got a Black Hawk Down.
Including Best Picture and Best Director.
Nobody asked to be a hero. It just sometimes turns out that way.
Rolling Stone hails it as one of the best movies of the year. Time Magazine calls it unforgettable, and Newsweek gives it 4 stars.
We're going home!
One of the top 10 films of the year. Black Hawk Down, rated R. Now playing in New York and Los Angeles, everywhere January 18th.
All power toothbrushes are not created equal. Sonicare's patented sonic technology and dynamic cleaning action get your teeth whiter and healthier in 28 days, guaranteed. Ask your dentist about Sonicare.
Heartburn? Give me a cold one.
Introducing Tums Cool Relief with Freva crystals for an immediate cooling, soothing sensation and fast heartburn relief. New Tums Cool Relief with calcium.
Asthma was watching my kids grow up and not always being able to participate. Advair is an asthma product that's clinically proven to improve lung function and increase symptom-free days to help you do more of the things you want to do. That's because Advair is the first and only product to effectively treat the 2 main components of asthma, airway constriction and inflammation. Just 1 inhalation, morning and night. Advair won't replace fast-acting inhalers for sudden symptoms and should not be taken more than twice a day. People switching from an oral steroid like prednisone to Advair, which contains an inhaled steroid, need to be especially careful. While adjusting to the switch, your body may not be as able to heal after surgery, infection, or serious injury. If you have heart or blood pressure problems, tell your doctor. Some people may experience a change in heart rhythm. See your doctor if your asthma does not improve. Ask your doctor if Advair is right for you. Advair, because life should take your breath away, not asthma.
We now continue with A Lesson from Ben. Here again is Jane Pauley.
Returning to our story, officials at Martin Memorial Hospital in Florida now knew why young Ben Kolb had died, and they knew it was the hospital's fault. They were about to do something that hospitals in the same situation rarely do. They were about to trust Ben's family with the full, damning, and heartbreaking truth. Again, John Hockenberry.
I knew there had to be an answer somewhere. Whether they had it at that point or not, I didn't know, but I knew if somebody made the effort, we could find the answer. Wait a minute, who's this from?
From Santa!
Tim Kolb wanted to know what had happened to his son. Why had Ben died following routine ear surgery? After its investigation, Martin Memorial Hospital knew what had gone wrong and why. But the hospital was at a critical juncture.
The damage had already been done. The child was dead. Okay, so you have 2 choices. You can lie, you can cover up, you can spin it, or you can be honest. And the nice thing about the truth is you basically only have to tell it once.
Surprisingly, the hospital chose to go public with the results of their investigation.
But that was also an opportunity, it seems to me, for an institution like this and for you to say, look, we circle the wagons, we put up the walls, we issue a no comment. Basically, our next step is dealing with, a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Why didn't you do that?
That wasn't the right thing to do.
In whose eyes?
In any of our eyes. Martin Memorial is very committed to ethical medicine.
Together, Dr. McLean and Donnie Haas drove to a meeting with the Kolbs at their lawyer's office, prepared to announce something almost unheard of, that Martin Memorial Hospital was responsible for their son's death. It was both a financial and an emotional gamble.
It was real personal. I have a grandson that age.
And 6 children of your own?
And 6 of my own, right? I could really relate to this.
You're looking at parents' eyes that, their child is dead because of a mistake, and that, it's, how could you take my baby away? Because, this is a very beautiful, healthy child. that should not have died.
What was the first thing in reaction that the Kolbs said to you? Do you remember?
I don't think they could speak, really. I don't recall them saying anything. I remember a huge tear on Mrs. Kolb's cheek.
I was in shock. I was in just an utter shock that such a simple mistake, number one, could occur in an operating room, and number two, that it could so easily take a life.
As painful as it was to hear, the facts about Ben's death were what the Kolbs wanted, even more than a multi-million-dollar settlement.
Revenge wasn't there for me.
So on the list of things you wanted from them, it wasn't money at the top.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't people being fired at the top.
No, no.
It was just an answer.
Oh, yeah, we wanted to know what happened. We wanted the truth.
In fact, after hearing the hospital's admission about how Ben had died and why, and what had been done to fix its system, the Kolbs made an equally remarkable decision not to file a lawsuit.
You hear the stories how it could drag on and on and on for years, and you don't get closure for a very long time in a situation like that, and I didn't want to have to go through that procedure.
A confidential settlement was reached that evening.
You were, in a sense, betting the farm, betting uncountable liability for this institution, that the Kolbs were going to look at your honesty and candor and say, let's move on.
Yes, that is one way to look at it. But why go through years of litigation and pain? We've already hurt this family. Let's help them heal.
Are you proud of the way this hospital handled the situation?
You know, what I find appalling about this whole thing is that it's still being held out as an example and being unique. All we did was treat this patient's family the way we want to be treated, and we were honest and forthright.
You know, the hospital says that one of their lessons from this whole experience is that truth works.
Oh, absolutely. Truth can help other people who suffer a loss, but more importantly, it can wake up people's eyes in the medical profession to the possibility of errors to avoid these situations from happening in the first place.
Martin Memorial came clean about Ben's death, but knowing how their own system, which they thought was safe, ended up producing a deadly mistake, that was a piece of information other hospitals and doctors needed to know about fast.
We had information about a common procedure used throughout the world. So we knew that we had a key to making this safer.
There was a fix to the problem. It was cheap, it was simple, and it was something every hospital could do today. But would they?
Is it possible for a procedure to cause a death in, say, Florida, and the same procedure still being used months after the incident?
It is unfortunately possible.
When we return, have other hospitals learned the simple lessons that would have prevented a child's death in the operating room?
I am surprised and concerned that the same setup is being used.
Could what happened to the Kolb family happen to yours? When A Lesson from Ben continues.
I know my daughter. She's just like me. Works for every grade she gets. She thinks I dress like an idiot. And she wishes her chest were bigger. She knows people who do drugs. I know she doesn't do them. I know, because I ask. I ask all the time.
Through all those long years, you knew this day would come.
Entertainment Weekly calls The Lord of the Rings a great and triumphant picture. Newsweek raves it has real passion, real emotion, real terror. Nominated for 4 Golden Globes, including Best Director and Best Picture of the Year. See the movie CNN Calls, a spectacular holiday gift for the whole world. The Lord of the Rings, directed by Peter Jackson, rated PG-13, now playing in theaters.
The day has just begun. It's asking for the taking.
Later on an all-new Tonight Show, kick off the new year with Jay as Kelly Ripa exposes Regis.
Regis still waving, getting very bored.
Plus, the Detroit Lions' Johnny Morton gets the surprise of his life and headlines.
Getting the most out of your palm.
Then on Conan, Matthew Broderick, Rachel Weisz, and Conan's hot new boy band tonight.
This week, Lifeline, an extraordinary medical breakthrough for women and men. A new way to fight heart disease. NBC Nightly News this week.
Coming up on Dateline Friday, who pays more for home repairs, men or women?
I really believe that just being female, I was taken advantage of.
Dateline wanted to know, and so we put service people to the test while our hidden cameras watched.
Your total is 405.87.
Okay.
Were men treated better? Were women cheated more? You'll be able to tell us what you think will happen live and online in a special interactive Dateline. And on Dateline Sunday,
We'll turn those people on. Yes, we will.
he was a good old country boy with a bad reputation.
When people think of Travis Tritt, they think of rebel, rowdy, hellraiser.
Taking the fast track to stardom, and then a long walk on the wild side.
Come on!
Shake your hand. How you doing, Travis? Nice to see you. And they put a gram of cocaine in your hand.
Crazy nights, on stage and backstage.
I was living a 70s lifestyle in the middle of the 1990s. The only difference between the 90s and the 70s was AIDS.
What would it take to turn his life around?
It scared the hell out of me. And I thought, I'm gonna end up probably dead.
From bad boy to Mr. Nice Guy, Travis Tritt's new tune.
Spend a little time with me, baby. Let me know exactly how you feel.
And next, are other hospitals using the same operating room setup that killed young Ben Kolb? How hard is it to sound the alarm?
It is a piecemeal system at best.
Could your family be at risk from the same deadly mistake? When A Lesson from Ben continues after this brief message.
Ocean's 11 is the coolest thing around.
Someone call for a doctor?
One of the year's 10 best. 2 thumbs up.
Why do this? Why not do it? Been practicing this speech a little bit. Did I rush it? That was good. I liked it.
Ocean's 11, rated PG-13, now playing.
Hey, if we get hurt, whoa, good thing we got insurance.
What's that?
Aflac!
What'd you say?
Aflac! Pays you cash if you can't work.
Before that!
I said I'm glad we got that insurance.
Not that!
Aflac. Ask about it at work.
The Majestic is one of the best movies of the year. An irresistible tale that couldn't come along at a better time. See the movie Ebert and Hooper give 2 thumbs up.
Do you remember me?
No, but I'll sure try.
The Majestic, rated PG.
Cough waking you up in the middle of the night? No kidding. You got a cough medicine you take every 4 hours. Get a new all-night cough medicine. Introducing new NyQuil Cough. The new all-night coughing so you can sleep cough medicine from the makers of NyQuil.
Here, kitty.
We return now to A Lesson from Ben, a Dateline special. Here again, Stone Phillips.
When officials at Martin Memorial Hospital admitted their fatal mistake, they hoped that sharing their experience might help save lives. But getting the medical community to listen turned out to be a lot harder than anyone ever thought. Here with the conclusion to our story, John Hockenberry.
Did you go fishing with Daddy? Did you catch snapper? Good for you.
It's been 6 years now since the tragic death of Tim Kolb's little boy, Ben.
Do you have any pets at home?
Yeah.
What do you have?
A bird.
I stopped having a normal life the day my son died. I'll never have a normal life again. I try to, but it's never going to be normal.
Hey, Ben, let me see. Good job, Ben.
6 years, plenty of time for hospitals around the nation to learn the simple lessons that might have prevented Ben's death.
Really neat, man.
To Ben's father, Tim, it was unthinkable that in the life or death environment of an operating room, identical-looking drugs could be handled so casually. He wouldn't do that in his own wood shop.
It was so easy for things to be switched around. My gosh, when we work in our shop, we work with chemicals, pouring resin finishes on tabletops. The drums are labeled. The buckets they go into are labeled. Even the buckets we drain into are labeled. And this half of the solution is kept well over there, away from the other half of the solution that is equally marked as well.
And here, all that's at stake is you throw out a piece of wood if you get it wrong.
Yeah, I might lose $20 or something, you know.
And in an operating room, where life is at stake?
They had less set up than I did for pouring tables.
But what might seem simple to a woodworker is anything but in the complicated world of healthcare. Consider this shocking fact Dateline learned. There is no universal standard, no national requirement whatsoever telling hospitals how to prepare the medications in their operating rooms. Why?
That's because healthcare is like no other industry. If a fatal accident occurs at, say, an airline or a nuclear power plant, there's an immediate federal public investigation. Every company and supplier is required to open its books to inspectors. Any fix uncovered by the investigation is immediately adopted industry-wide as a matter of law. Don't comply, you're shut down. But when fatal accidents happen in hospitals, there are no federal investigations. There are no federal inspectors, no government databases to count the number of mistakes and types of errors. In fact, in most states, hospitals aren't even required by law to report their deadly errors at all.
It is a piecemeal system at best.
Dr. Dennis O'Leary is president of the Joint Commission on Accrediting Healthcare Organizations, a private nonprofit created 50 years ago by leading medical groups to make hospitals in general, and operating rooms in particular, safer places.
Basically, there is no real equivalent in healthcare to the kind of mandatory instantaneous investigation and reporting system, say, in aviation.
There is no national system of that nature, and no efforts to disseminate lessons learned to organizations.
In the absence of any government agency, Dr. O'Leary's Joint Commission writes general performance standards, conducts hospital inspections, and issues accreditations. Without that seal of approval, a hospital can have a hard time keeping its doors open. And on a national level, the Joint Commission is about all there is. Not much, considering that medical mistakes appear to be the 8th leading cause of death in this country, according to this recent report from the Institute of Medicine. Anywhere from 44,000 to 98,000 people are killed in hospitals each year from medical mistakes, says the report. But in the 7 years since the Joint Commission's been collecting information on fatal medical mistakes, its database contains less than 1,500 cases.
So how can you set standards when, even by your own admission, you're receiving such a tiny slice of the data related to medical mistakes in healthcare?
The data that we do get, we believe, is reasonably representative of what's out there. We gather, unlike any other database I'm aware of, not simply the occurrence, but the underlying causes.
6 years ago, the commission got the call in the Ben Kolb case. Martin Memorial Hospital immediately disclosed its fatal mistake and described the simple changes it made to prevent the mistake from happening again. So did the commission actually prohibit hospitals from using that flawed system to prepare drugs in operating rooms?
Have you issued a statement saying never do this in the operating room?
We have not issued such a statement.
Day 7 to day
The commission
20,
did sponsor a conference where Donnie Haas and Dr. McLean spoke on medical safety, and they published an essay in their newsletter. But the medical industry's own watchdog has never issued a new safety standard based on the Ben Kolb case.
We do not write our standards at the level of procedures. This is the difference.
But that's where the errors occur.
No, I beg to differ with you. This is the difference between swatting mosquitoes and draining the swamp. In organizations, if there is not an orientation to identifying, analyzing, and fixing problems, then we are going to have a big problem.
I think that's terrific, but how much analysis do you need to write 2 lines which would have saved Ben Kolb down in Florida? How much analysis do you need for that?
No, I understand that, but then the next patient will die from another detail, and the next patient. And
so fix that one.
But you're swatting mosquitoes. The issue here.
Is that what the FAA would say about a cracked bolt? We're swatting mosquitoes?
No, but I think the FAA and the advice that's come out of the airline safety reporting systems have been much more systems-oriented.
So what kind of systems-oriented changes does the Joint Commission make? Take the case of concentrated potassium chloride, a life-saving drug that's fatal if injected without first being diluted. Every year, hospital patients are killed because the drug is accidentally injected in its concentrated form. Medical experts say there's an excruciatingly simple solution to this deadly and entirely preventable problem. Put the drug in the hospital pharmacy, away from the patient floor, so it can't be accidentally given without first being diluted. Knowing about the problem and the solution, this is what the Joint Commission sent out to hospitals.
You say, we suggest that healthcare organizations not make concentrated potassium chloride available unless specific safeguards are in place. That's not mandatory, that's more of a suggestion.
That's correct.
Doesn't that sound a little weak to you, given the lethality of potassium chloride?
But it recognizes the reality, and there are hospitals, actually a number of small hospitals, that do not maintain their pharmacies open 24 hours a day.
Now again, I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to hammer this aviation analogy, beyond its usefulness here. But if there was a case of a fatality caused by something that was immediately understood, cracked bolt in an airplane, if the FAA came out the next day and said, we've decided that we're going to encourage most airlines to replace this bolt, that person would be laughed off the face of the earth, don't you think? It would be either all or forget it.
These are not bolts, okay? This is a medication. The parallels between the aviation industry and healthcare are substantial, but they are not absolute.
Still, even the vaguely worded alert seems to have had an effect on deaths from potassium chloride, according to the Joint Commission's modest database. So why hasn't the Commission issued more, lots more alerts in other cases?
The Ben Kolb case was widely publicized. It was widely known. It is so obvious the steps that need to be taken. It is like issuing advisories that you shouldn't play in traffic. I mean, it's that simple.
If it's that simple, that widely known, you might expect every hospital in America had learned the lesson from Ben Kolb's death and abandoned that flawed procedure.
But that hasn't happened. In fact, when we contacted some of the nation's best hospitals, they all told us they were using the very same setup Martin Memorial did, open cups and all. Still, there are about 5,000 hospitals in this country, and to find out just how widely this setup is being used, we talked to the organization that wrote the book on nursing safety in the operating room.
This is a commonly performed procedure that has inherent risks involved in it.
Ramona Connor is a surgical nursing specialist at the Association of Perioperative Nurses, the widely recognized authority for safe operating room practices. She fields calls about safety issues from nurses at hospitals around the country. And Connor says the risk of another fatal medication mix-up hasn't set off any alarm bells.
In operating rooms, as with airline flights, a small error can have a disastrous consequence.
The procedure that took Ben's life is not only commonly performed, says Nurse Connor, it's entirely unnecessary.
There's no need to pull the lidocaine from the container and pouring it into a secondary container. When that is done, there is an inherent risk of confusion occurring.
But even the well-respected AORN, which has published articles warning about medication errors in operating rooms, even they don't address the issue in their own official standards and practices.
I'm afraid I don't know why it hasn't made it into our recommended practices. I can't answer that.
For now, sounding the alarm is up to the Joint Commission, which says it's serious about medical safety.
Are you surprised to learn that the same procedure that Martin Memorial Hospital discovered in the Ben Kolb case is being used at other hospitals after the death of a little boy?
Well, I am surprised and concerned that the same setup is being used, and I think that makes a perfectly reasonable case that we should issue an advisory on that.
The Ben Kolb case was some years ago. I mean, this is not just occurring to you now that I'm talking to you, right?
No, but I have.
I mean, if that's the case, then I'm really concerned.
Well, that is new information to me, but is also information of great concern, and is more than sufficient to cause me to believe that we should issue an appropriate advisory.
And about 3 months after that interview, they did. But in 6 years since a little boy died, this is the most urgent message to come from the agency responsible for monitoring medical mistakes. Hospitals may choose, the message says, to evaluate the process for preparing medications for use in operating rooms. Not a bad idea, but if you were having surgery tomorrow, how would you feel, knowing this is as loud as the alarm ever gets?
If an airline crashed, we as a public would never stand for the airline not sharing the information that they learned from that crash. It's public knowledge so that that crash can be avoided on some other airline or some other airplane. In medicine, we don't do that.
The Joint Commission says that despite an alert it issued in 1998, reports of another type of medical mistake, operating on the wrong part of a patient's body, have more than tripled in the past 3 years. And like the mistake that killed Ben Kolb, these wrong site surgeries are all too preventable. There are steps patients can take to minimize the risk of a medical mistake. To learn more, you can log on to our website. The address is dateline.msnbc.com.
That's all for this edition of Dateline Tuesday. We'll see you again for Dateline Friday at 9, 8 Central. Now stay tuned for your local news. I'm Jane Pauley. For all of us at NBC News, good night.
Later on The Tonight Show, Jay's packing the stands. The audience is Rose Bowl rival teams, the Miami Hurricanes and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Your local news is next.